Hey, welcome to Sports Unfolded. Very special Dynasties, top Dynasties. It's a new segment for our show. We are trying to basically bring back some of the old. I am your host, Eric. My main man right over there, Ron. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm a little
Glad to hear
dark
it.
right now.
Yeah, you are a little dark.
A little dark.
So, I
How's that?
mean, we do so much with the current sports scene every Friday night at 6 p.m. live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. But we said, let's do something different. Let's go back in time and let's talk about some of these Back to the Future, Marty McFly. We are basically going back and looking at some of these great dynasties that were built that kind of changed the format of sports as we know it. So we decided today to go with the 1992 Dallas Cowboys. So that era from 92 to 95, they won 3 Super Bowl titles. We thought this would be kind of fun. First team to cover on our first episode.
I'm surprised at you. I figured this would have been a golden opportunity to do the 1918 Yankees.
I thought about it and I said, you know what? I want to save the best for last. So we decided to go with, maybe something a little more current.
Okay.
If that works for you. If that works for you. So how we're going to do it is we're basically going to break down how they got those championships, what kind of teams they faced in that era, and then we'll talk about the players and everything else in between. But let's start in 1992, right? So their first championship went 13-3, the Dallas Cowboys. First opponent in the divisional playoff round was the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes.
And we talk about some of their key players. Randall Cunningham, if you think about quarterbacks today, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Randall Cunningham was that first guy. Ironically, their running back at the time, Herschel Walker. So if you think about what Herschel Walker meant to the Dallas Cowboys, the trade that basically set them up to become, Super Bowl champions, it's just ironic that he ended up playing them in that first round of the playoffs, their first year as a champion. And then go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's kind of like a full circle kind of thing. And I mean, Herschel Walker was, a good running back. But I mean, it was made out to be something more special than what it really was.
Absolutely. So if you think about it, Minnesota made the trade. I think it was 4 players, like 8 draft picks. Never won a championship. Didn't even get to the Super Bowl off of that trade. So if you think about some of the steals, we talked about the Rudy Gobert deal with Utah and all those draft picks, and we're like, what a horrible. This was probably the worst trade in history of trades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it didn't really formulate into anything else. They also had one other key player there, and that was Reggie White.
Yes.
And ironically, as we go down this list of the teams that they beat, you'll see some of these names again on some of these other teams. So it's just ironic how they got there. So they beat the Philadelphia Eagles 34-10 to face the San Francisco 49ers in the conference championship.
Yeah.
At the time, they still had Joe Montana. We talked Jerry Rice, running back Ricky Waters, Bill Romanowski, linebacker.
Yes.
You'll see his name again. And then this was the start of the Steve Young era when he took over right after this loss. This is when Steve Young started to kick in. But they won that game 30-20. And we talked about, again, if you think about the dominance of Joe Montana, what he meant to in the 80s, this was the passing of the torch. This is where the Dallas Cowboys started to take over. And then, unfortunately, the Buffalo Bills got to face them in the Super Bowl. And one of the most lopsided Super Bowls, 52-17.
Yeah, that was ugly.
So I can tell you a story about this game. I was watching it with a co-worker of mine way back in the day, back when we had video stores. That's how old I am. We worked at the video store together. He came over to watch the Super Bowl. He's a Dallas Cowboys fan. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. We decided I was rooting for Buffalo, AFC. I always try to stay loyal to the AFC. We were going to do shots based on every time the other opposing team scored.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so needless to say, once Dallas was dominating, he got tired of not taking shots because basically Buffalo wasn't scoring. That he just joined in. But needless to say, I don't remember much of the end of that game because
No.
I mean, 52. If you think about how many shots I literally had to take, it wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
But they had some great players: Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed, James Lofton, Bruce Smith, Cornelius Bennett, Steve Taska. When you think about special teams and how important it was back then, that's Steve Taska. But they dominated, and
Yeah.
and you said, okay, well, this is the team of the future, right? So that was their first year, 92. 93,
Which was actually probably their best
the
year.
best year. They went 13-3 that year.
Right.
Had the best record out of all three of these Super Bowl winning teams.
But they were number 2 seed, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they were. They were. And see, here goes the show. It doesn't really matter where you get seated. It's how you play in the key games.
This is true.
So 93 went 12-4. The divisional round, they played the Green Bay Packers, won 27-17. Some guy named Brett Favre, quarterback. Sterling Sharp. Mark Clayton was actually on that team. If you think about the Miami Dolphin great, Mark Clayton. Reggie White had decided, I remember the whole press conference, the Lord had told him this is where he needed to go. So he left Philly to go to Green Bay, ended up losing to them again.
And Philly didn't even make the playoffs.
No, that year. Leroy Butler is another great DB for the Green Bay Packers. But again, 27-17. Got to face the San Francisco 49ers again in the conference championship. Won that game 38-21. Steve Young, Ricky Waters, Jerry Rice, Bill Romanowski, who left. Oh, no, who's still there. That's the next year. And Brent Jones. We forget about Brent Jones, the tight end. He was a very good tight end as well. So, again, if we talk about the teams they were beating, some of the quality teams.
Yeah.
Luckily, they got to face the Buffalo Bills again in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, go figure.
Right?
Like, how many times you think that Buffalo is going to get back to it?
Right? And 30.
Oh,
so
4.
Four straight, yeah. I mean, at least they won one. Oh, no, wait.
Oh, that's wrong.
No,
that's
that
wrong.
wasn't called for.
Well, they did it this past. Oh, no, they didn't.
Oh, and if Christie, I mean, if he didn't hook it left just an inch, they would at least had 1 out of 3.
Yeah.
But so 30-13, again, we talked about the players. I forgot to mention last time, Don Beebe.
Oh,
Don
yeah.
Beebe was always like that slot guy, and we talk about what that slot.
Speedster.
So you can see today's game emulating some of what they were, and that Bills offense at the time. I mean, it was just like no huddle, run and shoot, gun. I mean, they were just up and down the field. But they faced a great defense.
Team too.
Yep, great team. 94. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about that. They had a little stumble.
Yeah, I mean, they still went to 12-4
Yep.
like the previous season, and they just went up against the brick wall.
Yeah, third straight year in a row, right? Just
playing San Francisco,
49ers.
yeah.
They lost 38-28. And
Yeah.
that was the year Steve Young won it, and that was the monkey off the back and all that. I'm not sure if it was just about Joe Montana and getting that monkey off the back, or if it was about beating the Dallas Cowboys, because they hadn't been able to.
It was
do
a little
that
bit of both,
for
to be
2
honest.
years, right? So got back to their winning ways, but in between that, there was a little. So we forgot to mention after 93, there was some kind of change with the Dallas Cowboys. And that was a head coaching change. So that's when Jerry Jones became Jerry Jones, I think, in most of our eyes.
Yeah.
He decided that Jimmy Johnson had too much control, too much power. Wasn't exactly thrilled with the fact that Jimmy Jones was getting the credit.
You also have to look at it this way. Jimmy Johnson was actually a smarter football brain than Jerry Jones was. And to me, that reflected on his coaching decision. He wanted somebody that wasn't going to be dominant in the room.
Exactly. So made a change to Barry Switzer So when we talk about uh, a, a servant leader, like just somebody that was going to take what you give
Yeah.
them and just roll with it, that was Barry Switzer. Sarah, thanks for joining. Nice to see you as well.
Yeah, it makes me believe that anybody could have coached a team that year and still won the Super Bowl, because I was never sold on Barry Switzer
No,
coming in. I thought he was a terrible head coach and was a yes man, and I didn't understand why until, you know, then you start digging into Jerry
yeah,
Jones.
exactly. You start to realize
Yeah.
the owner, and he got lucky though. In '95, they went 12-4, won a championship with Barry Switzer. So they started up, got to face the Eagles again in the divisional round. Won that one 30-11. Again, Randall Cunningham, Ricky Waters actually was their running back.
Yep.
So he came over from San Francisco. Wide receiver. See if you remember this name, Art Monk.
Oh God, yes.
Do you even remember Art Monk being on the Philip? So you think about Washington Redskins, Art Monk. I forgot that he went to Philly.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, and then linebacker Bill Romanowski was also on that team. So
Yep.
again, left San Francisco. So that was kind of interesting. Conference championship. They beat the Green Bay Packers 38-27. Brett Favre, Robert Brooks, Keith Jackson, former Philadelphia Eagle tight end, was on that team. Reggie White. So again,
Yeah.
another loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Leroy
Well,
Butler.
like the glaring thing is the absence of San Francisco in this.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you look at all these star players in Philly and Green Bay that season, and you obviously can translate that they lost too many players in San Francisco and, you know, couldn't get back to it.
Which is
So
which is crazy. Of all the teams that the Dallas Cowboys faced in those 3 years, to me, this was the weakest team in the Super Bowl, and that was the Pittsburgh Steelers. They won that game 27-17. Very good defense. So you look at the defensive side of the ball, Kevin
yeah,
Green, Rod Woodson, Greg Lloyd, all very good defensive players. Quarterback Neil O'Donnell.
yeah,
And I
that's
struggled to find a quality offensive player on that team
yeah,
that I could say, wow. If you think about it, the hero of that game was what? Larry Brown.
oh yeah,
And it's basically because Neil O'Donnell threw he would have been the biggest goat if he missed them. Two straight shots right at him. It was like Larry Brown was the wide receiver and Neil O'Donnell was playing
yeah,
catch with him.
yep,
So I just felt like of the three, look, Buffalo was a very good team. To beat those two Buffalo teams, and the way you beat the Buffalo team the first year showed some dominance. The Steelers one, I kind of like, eh. And again, we talked about the coaching. If this was a Jimmy Johnson coach team, to me, they beat that team by probably 50 to 20 or
yes,
something.
yes, exactly. That's, you know, that's one of the points I was getting at with Barry Switzer. I mean, he got out coached that game. He just had so much talent that you couldn't help but win.
Yeah, you couldn't screw it up. It would be very hard to screw it up. So, I mean, that's how they got there.
Yeah.
Let's talk the key players in all of this. And we're gonna start off, we're gonna bring up the owner, and that's Jerry Jones. So Jerry Jones, if you think about it, bought the team back in 1989. One of the first draft picks, Troy Aikman that year, right? Jimmy Johnson, you think about how they built it. But he bought the team February 25th. The first move he made, he fired Tom Landry, who had been the coach for 29 years. You think about history, making a tough decision. I'm not going to look, we can knock Jerry Jones for a lot of things. Was probably the best move he made was firing Tom Landry. The game had passed, the game had changed. I thought it was a great move.
Absolutely.
Right? So he ultimately hired Jimmy Johnson as his head coach. And we think about this, Ron. Do you know how much he paid for the Dallas Cowboys back in 1989? Do you want to take a guess?
No, I don't even remember. Probably not much.
$140 million.
Yeah. compared to what it's worth
You know
now.
what they're worth today?
It's like over $1 billion, isn't it?
$2.3 billion.
Yeah.
You talk about an investment.
Yep.
Jerry Jones did pretty good on that one.
Yeah. Yep.
But if we want to talk about some of the criticisms on Jerry Jones, do you feel like at this point it's similar to the Tom Landry thing? Has the game passed them by?
Yeah, and it's not so much it's passed him by. He just thinks he's smarter about the game than what he actually is. And look, you can say, oh, they should do this, they should do that, and this player needs to come here. And look, it takes skill to know what players' skills are. If that makes any sense, you have to recognize, that young talent and project it to be, NFL talent. And not everybody can do that. Jerry Jones thinks he can do that, but he cannot do that. That's not his forte. His forte, business. Okay? You want to tell us all about business and what you do with marketing and blah, blah, blah. Yes, we listen. But when you tell us, oh, this guy is going to be the greatest player, no. That's not your forte. You just sign the checks. You have experts do what they do. Don't put your 2 cents in.
Yeah. Listen, they're close to approaching a 30-year drought in the Super Bowl. And you can single-handedly say that he became the end-all, be-all when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. And I think that's ultimately what's affecting them, because you need a guy in the front office that's going to make decisions. Absolutely. The owner should be there to just say, look, you could sign off on it. You may say, I don't like it. But then that gives you an opportunity to fire this guy that you put in charge of that. Right now, there is none of that. He is the end-all, be-all. He's making all the decisions. He makes at the end of the games, he's doing the press conferences.
Yeah, and I don't like the history of coaching decisions since Jimmy.
Yeah, agreed.
When you really look at it, it has been all guys that are going to say, yes, sir. I don't care who's in there now, previous, they've all been, yes, sir. That's that. It has not been a great mind as a head coach.
Well, think about it. Jason Garrett. How long did Jason Garrett hang on to a job?
Right.
Clearly was being outcoached every year.
Yeah.
And yet somehow he remained
terrible.
because Jerry Jones liked him. He was a likable guy who was on the team before. That's not how you run a good business.
And he ran it the way Jerry Jones wanted it. That's it. That says it all.
Which is insane. Great businessman, to your point. I agree with you 100%. You spent $140 million, now it's $2.3 billion. You did something right.
Right.
You hired the right coach at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that might be the only time a coach had full control, because Jimmy Johnson made all the calls.
That's right.
He drafted, he made all the decisions. So you see what happens when you decide to take over.
And this is why they haven't won anything.
Yeah, he's always taking credit for the Barry Switzer one, I think, Jerry Jones, because there was no Jimmy. And honestly, that was still part of Jimmy's team. That was still Jimmy's team.
Yeah, that was Jimmy's
Jimmy had built that team.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the coach. Let's bring him up there real quick. A nice little shot of him with the Super Bowl trophy, Jimmy Johnson. So, again, hired in 1989. He's a two-time Super Bowl champion. He's a Hall of Famer. He is in the Hall of Fame. You think about his start, though. Rough start. 89 went 1-15.
Yeah.
Right? That's Troy Aikman's first year. Second year, 7-9. 91 went 11-5. Made the playoffs, won their first round game, and then lost. And then 92, 93, obviously, both years won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So ultimately, your opinion of Jimmy Johnson?
I think he's a great coach. You gave him a rookie quarterback, and he basically trained this team to eventually win. And, his fingerprints are on the dynasty everywhere, all over.
from the trade, the players he picked.
Yep.
So you look at some of his draft picks. I don't know, some guy named Emmitt Smith.
Yeah.
He was all right. Alvin Hopper, the wide receiver. Russell Maryland, Troy Aikman. I mean, Michael Irvin was there prior to, but even the offensive line. I mean, Nate Newton, defensive line, Leon Lett. You know what I mean? Like these guys were just all phenomenal football players, and he saw something. He knew something. Came over from the University of Miami. When you think about their dominance in the 80s and what some of those teams were.
Yeah.
Hence why he was so successful in the NFL.
Yeah, and I mean, you like we said, look all over the place. He also got Robert Jones, the linebacker. He drafted him and ends up winning Rookie of the Year and contributed to the Super Bowl.
No, great point. Great point. So let's talk about the other coach, and we're going to bring him up there. And again, got to hold that Super Bowl trophy. That's Barry Switzer. So he got hired in 94. The team went 12-4. You discussed the fact they did lose to the 49ers. Following year, 95, went back 12-4, won the Super Bowl. 96 went 10-6, and then in 97, 6-10, and ultimately was fired as the head coach. Was this where we started to see the breakdown of the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, yeah. Okay, so he wins that trophy that he's holding right there because he had a great team that should have probably won it the year before, but the addition of Dion kind of cinched that. I mean, like you couldn't throw to his side of the field. So, and then when you have other guys on the other side that are still capable, I mean, it was like you still had Woodson and all that.
Right? You think about defensively, they were loaded.
Yeah.
Offensively, you still had the best running back in the game at the time in Emmitt Smith.
Yep.
Right? You had a capable wide receiver in Michael Irvin.
Yeah.
You had a capable quarterback in Troy Aikman, even though they were in, again, you're talking about 6-7 years down the road now.
Yep.
The Moose. We were going to discuss him, right? Who made those holes for Emmitt Smith?
Oh, my
Darryl
God.
Johnson, the Moose.
Like, he just plowed right through him.
But think about the team today,
it followed.
Where's the fullbacks? They don't even exist for the most part
I
anymore.
know.
And how big of a factor was he in the – not only was that offensive line phenomenal, but you had a lead back that just created holes to allow Emmitt Smith to rush for over 18,000 yards.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, like Emmitt Smith could have had time to just like plant some flowers and stuff like that on the way to the the end zone. He had all kinds of time. Stop and sign some autographs.
Unreal. So Barry Switzer, we will move on, but he got a ring. I know how important that is to you. So when we do our pick and rolls, so he would be ahead of some of these other coaches in the league.
Yeah.
Let's bring up this next Hall of Fame, and that's quarterback Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman, 94-71 in his career.
Yeah, he was okay.
32,942 yards, 165 touchdowns, 141 interceptions. 6-time Pro Bowler, obviously 3-time Super Bowl champ, MVP of Super Bowl 27. Ultimately, some of your thoughts in memories of Troy Aikman.
Look, it was a different game then, and when you add up the yardage, it doesn't look like super impressive compared to quarterbacks today. But I'll tell you what, if he was playing today, he would probably be one of the best in the league, and he's just smarter. You know what I'm saying? He's smarter than most quarterbacks. Like, I'm not saying he's as good as Brady, but I'll tell you, he's probably up there with him. And I think if all things were the same, I think he could have done what Brady has done. You know, if you put him on those teams in New England, I think you get, at least 3 of those Super Bowls, at least.
So we talk about trying to control the quarterback's always going to be the lead guy.
Yeah.
And you had some personalities. You had the
Right.
Leon Letts, the Charles Haley's,
Michael Irvin.
Michael Irvin, right? And you had to control that, right? Try controlling that
Yeah.
and getting production on the field. And then on top of it, you hit it right on the head when you said
Michael Irvin might be the original diva.
and I was going to bring that up when we talked about him, right? You think about where wide receivers are today, it was probably started with Michael Irvin.
Yeah.
But the game was so much more violent. And the thing I remember most about Troy Aikman is the concussions.
Yeah.
He took a beating.
Yeah.
And it probably ended his career quicker than it would have. As today's game, you see guys going 20 plus years.
Yeah.
A la Tom Brady, right? Because the game's changed.
Right.
You can't hit the quarterback in the head. You can't do some of the things. So you're right.
You can't hit him in the head, and you can't hit him below the knees.
You basically can't touch him.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, different story.
Fair game.
So his numbers may not look as impressive, but if you think about the era he played in, I agree with you. It's pretty damn impressive. And the fact that, again, he won 3 Super Bowls. How many quarterbacks get to say that?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the quarterbacks in the past, Troy Aikman, Joe Montana, Steve Young, what's his face? Oh my God, Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah.
Those guys would be phenomenal today. And they would win championships today. So you take away, the right to be hit, and those guys become,
A different animal.
Yep.
No, I agree. And it's just funny to think about. And think about this, Ron. 3 Super Bowls for Troy Aikman. He beat Steve Young a couple times. Steve Young only got 1.
I know.
Favre. He beat Brett Favre a couple times. Brett Favre only got 1. And those guys had great teams.
Yes, they did.
Right? So it just goes to show it's not as easy as it looks. Yes, you may have great players, but sometimes being that leader, and I think that's what Troy Aikman ultimately was for this team, is that.
Yeah, and the same thing with Buffalo, like Buffalo losing a couple of times to them. And that team was stacked.
Yeah.
That Buffalo team was no joke.
On both sides of the ball, too. It wasn't even like you say, they were good offensively, but defensively.
No, it was
they had one of the best sack leaders in history with Bruce Smith.
Yeah.
And they were able to do it. So, now, great discussion on Troy Aikman. Let's bring up this next gentleman, another Hall of Famer. So you think about, you're going to see a theme here with the offensive side of the ball. Emmitt Smith, 18,355 yards, 164 touchdowns, 8-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, 3-time Super Bowl champ, MVP Super Bowl 28.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on Emmitt Smith?
One of the best to play.
And it wasn't flashy. It's one of my favorite running backs of all time, Barry Sanders.
Let me expand on that. One of the best players to play NFL. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not just running back. I'm talking about every position. Like, this guy just did it every year.
Because he's looking at you with a mean face. It looks like he's a little.
Yeah, angry. I know. But he's always smiling.
We love you, Emmitt.
But like, you can't help but like the guy. You know what I'm saying? Like his work ethic, his overall meaning to the team. It goes beyond, being the star running back. He was more important to this team than just the numbers. I mean,
think about if Troy Aikman had to, drop back and throw more, how much more he would have got beat up. Emmitt Smith took a lot of that pounding.
Oh, God, yes.
Right? You think about the amount of carries. The thing I was saying, my favorite running back all time, Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
But that was because of the flash. Like, you just didn't know. He'd be in a pile of 5 guys. Next thing you know, he breaks out and he's, he's for 60 yards. Emmitt Smith wasn't that running back. Emmitt Smith was, to me, more pure power. Just when he got to a hole, you weren't bringing him down. He was, but he was still, like on skates. like a hockey player. He just seemed to
Graceful.
glide.
Yeah.
And
He's just a special player. And the longevity, the durability, like he wasn't a big guy either.
no,
It's like he wasn't a house, but the legs never stopped moving.
yeah,
Never stopped moving.
I mean, it did help, like you said, Darryl Johnson, Moose, in
That
front of him.
helps.
That offensive line was phenomenal. But again, you still have to have some kind of skill talent to be able to see the hole,
Yeah.
adjust, and you know what I mean? And he was able to do that.
Right.
Such a great player. Such a great. And you think about, as we're going down this list, you're going, oh, I love that guy. That guy was great. This guy was great. This guy. So you can see how they became a dynasty.
Yeah.
As you start to go through it, you can see, you're saying, okay, yep, I understand it now. So let's bring up this next guy, because I'm sure we're going to have a nice, lengthy conversation on him. And that's another Hall of Famer, though. That's Michael Irvin.
Yeah.
750 receptions in his career, 11,904 yards, 65 touchdowns, 5-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro, obviously 3-time Super Bowl champion. Your first impressions of Michael Irvin?
Well, I did not like him. There's a lot there. I mean, like we were talking, he's probably the original diva receiver, and that cocky attitude, like I'm better than you, and it's all there, and that makes you love him if he's on your team and hate him if he's not. But you got to know that every team and their fans would want him on their team.
Right? Yeah. If there was a guy that was going to give you heart, it was Michael Irvin. Like, he was not backing down from anything. And the funny thing about him was that, I would say, to your point, not so much about what he did on the field. It was a lot about what he did off the field.
Yeah.
Right. We there's a lot of stories out there.
Oh yeah.
What's true, what's not.
The party bus never stopped.
Right. But he was one of those guys that, like you say, how does Aikman control his team?
Yeah.
You got to get Michael Irvin on the field every week, which he was able to do and perform. But you think about how wide receivers, everybody likes to talk now, that trash game. And I'm not saying it wasn't back then. Michael Irvin brought it to the forefront. He was that guy. He made sure you heard about him, what he was doing. And he even does it now in the broadcasting. But I think, you know what? Honestly, it works in the broadcasting booth. I love what he does with the broadcasting.
Yeah.
Like, anything he does NFL-wise, he's even on First Take. And I love the fact. I think he's just, you could see there's so much energy.
Yeah.
But such a great wide receiver. But not another guy that you would say is flashy.
Yeah, I mean, he just goes out there and does his job, and he's good at it.
Right? It wasn't like Emmitt Smith, similar, just not this overly athletic. He was just consistent.
Yeah.
Again, Hall of Famer. So you think about it. You had a Hall of Fame quarterback, Hall of Fame running back, Hall of Fame wide receiver. That builds a dynasty.
Yes, it does.
But this also helps. You get your offensive line, and we're going to bring them. Look at those fellas. They look like they're having a good time. That was one of the Super Bowls. So Mark Tuinei, Nate Newton, Mark Stepanowski, John Giesecke, and Eric Williams. Also, Larry Allen at one point. And you think about Larry Allen, who's probably considered one of the greatest guards in the history of the NFL.
Yeah.
So all great we say is one in the trenches. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. I mean, this is a Hall of Fame cast. I mean, when you look at some of the guys, like Stepanowski left for a season, then came back, I believe. I like everyone that contributed. Like Nate Newton was an animal.
Yes.
Like he was probably the anchor in that group. And
6-time Pro Bowl, a 2-time All-Pro.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, when you go out and you have your offensive line win 2 Super Bowls, and then you go and you draft Larry Allen,
right?
And you don't make the Super Bowl that year for whatever reason. I have no idea. It had to be coaching or something. Then you go out and then you pick up, a guy that we're going to be talking about in a moment, to running your as a defensive back, and Larry Allen becomes a contributor
right away,
and then adds to Nate and the boys. I mean, how could you not have offense with that line?
Right. Oh. How many guys today would love to play behind that line?
How many quarterbacks have never played for a line?
Right. I'm going to bring up a name right now. Baker Mayfield.
Oh, my God.
This line with the Cleveland Browns, with those running backs today, Baker Mayfield probably wins a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Based on that offensive line.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like, it's just, we could sit there and say Troy Aikman, but he needed time. He needed protection.
Yeah.
Emmitt Smith needed these guys to block to get those holes, right? So
okay, imagine this. Imagine Tom Brady having that offensive line every year of his career.
They might have won. They probably would have just ran it right through. 15
I mean, you didn't even need any offensive talent. You just need that offensive line.
Right. It's just, look, they got how many? 5 Pro Bowls for Stepanowski, 4 Pro Bowls for Eric Williams, two All Pros, Eric Williams, 2 All Pros, Nate Newton. Like, these guys were all pros.
They were great,
and they all won the Super. 2-time Super Bowl champions. So they were all part of that era. And they don't get enough credit, and they think that's what happens. Offensive line, those are just that, and athleticism. We talk about it back in the day. You're talking 70s, 80s. Those guys weren't meant to be athletic. They were supposed to be just big, heavy-set guys that could just, move somebody. It started to change. Like a Nate Newton was 3 change, but the man could move.
Yeah.
And you think about offensive linemen today, they're 350, and they're running under 4.5s. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like
absolutely.
They started to change the game. Again, unreal. Like, as we were doing this, I was so excited to really start to break it down.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, when you start looking at any team, that you didn't root for, and you start looking at the names, it's like, oh yeah, I know who he is, and then you read through a bunch more. Oh, I know who he is. It's like every single player on that list.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking, it's like I know who all the good players are because I've heard of every single one of them.
Yep. Yeah.
And that shows you what kind of a dynasty the team is.
Yeah, it's just so much fun to do. Let's talk some defense. Defensive line here. We're gonna bring another Hall of Famer up. That's Charles Haley. But they had some great players. Russell Maryland, Leon Lett. I will never forget the Super Bowl. Leon Lett and with Don Beebe. Was it Don Beebe that knocked the ball out?
Oh God, yeah.
And it was like a short thing. Leon Lett's going to score in the Super Bowl, and then Don Beebe came out of nowhere, and it became a history. But again, Charles Haley, if you think about an anchor for some of those teams, but then he also left and went to San Francisco when they won. So, but again, 5-time Pro Bowl of all time, an All Pro, 2-time All Pro, another great player. But defensive line again was one of those dominant areas for the Dallas Cowboys in that era.
Yeah, and that's what should be winning it today as we speak. The lines are so important, and you see the defensive lines, with like a Von Miller and Bosa and all these guys. These guys are important for a reason. And you have to put pressure on the quarterback, because if you don't put pressure on the quarterback, you're just going to get run up on.
And these guys were able to do that. And, Charles Haley was a sack master. Leon Lett, just a big guy. You weren't running through him.
No.
So, Russell Maryland, another, again, and a lot of these guys had some Miami roots. And it was just funny how he brought some of the Hurricanes over that had played for him, and he was able to get the same performance in the pros as he did in college. So you don't always see that translate well.
Yeah.
You might be really good in college, but that's because you're just a notch better than a college kid. But then you get to the pros, and it's not the same talent.
No.
He got talent out of Jimmy Johnson. Did a great job with a lot of these guys. Linebacker Ken Norton Jr. too. We forget about him.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right, and he was one of those guys that again was always on the field somewhere.
Yeah.
I can remember him making so many plays, and he ended up leaving too. I forget. Did he go to? No, not yet. That's Dion. Dion's coming. Dion's coming. That's our DBs. We could get to Dion in a little bit. Ron wants to get right into DBs. But yeah, Ken Norton Jr., he left as well. I believe he went somewhere. Did he not, or did he come from San Francisco? It's one of the two.
I don't remember if he went or came from, but I know he did leave.
I'm kind of curious.
I'm thinking maybe he did go to San Francisco after.
Wait, was it after or before? That's what I'm trying to. Ken Norton. Let's see here. He went from Dallas to San Francisco. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and that was the Super Bowl. Yeah. Yeah. So again, maybe that's some of that when we talked about some changes.
Yeah, so you had two guys that leave Dallas and go to San Francisco and they win.
Yeah.
That's a shocker.
Well, since he's up on the screen, let's talk about the DBs and the cornerback. Deion Sanders, Hall of Famer. Again, not really known for his Dallas years. I mean, Atlanta was when he became Deion primetime.
Yeah.
But he was able to go to Dallas, solidify that secondary, able to win them a championship. Again, when you talked about the coaching change.
This is how Barry Switzer won his championship.
Yeah, right. They picked up some key players. 8-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ. One of my favorite players. I've always loved primetime. The two-way player, him, Bo Jackson, were the two guys that really stood out to me when it came to that. And I don't remember. We talked about it on one of the shows. I think he was one of the first guys ever in a World Series to play in a World Series and a playoff game. Like on, the same year. Like you think about what he was able to do, Deion. But another guy we talked about recently, Darren Woodson.
Yes.
Right? 5-time Pro Bowl, 3-time All-Pro, 3-time Super Bowl champ. Another guy, great, consistent.
Yeah, I believe he was a rookie in that first season.
Yeah.
1992.
So again.
And contributed right away. And he was a mainstay on that team.
Jimmy Johnson was just able to find guys and the talent. It's just amazing because, and the only thing that really blew my mind more, the lack of Hall of Famers. Like they had so many other guys, but you only got, you got Aikman, Smith, Irvin. How does like a Darren Woodson not be, not a Hall of Famer? How's a Nate Newton not a Hall of Famer?
I don't know.
It kind of blows my mind. Another guy that they had for all 3 Super Bowls, Larry Brown. And you think about, right, we joke, Larry Brown, right? 3 Super Bowl champions, single-handedly won the Super Bowl against Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes, he did.
They wouldn't be there. They wouldn't have had a third without him.
Yeah. And I remember that game so well. So well.
It's like, who's he throwing to, Neil O'Donnell? We're like,
yeah.
What is he doing? Nobody was even near Larry Brown. And it was like,
yeah,
okay, I guess he's throwing to Larry Brown.
Because I did not like the Dallas Cowboys. And I didn't like Pittsburgh either, but, I went AFC, because I was a Patriots fan.
Yeah.
And I'm like desperately like screaming at the TV, what are you doing? What are you doing?
And you brought up a good point. Dynasties. How many times do you really like a dynasty? You either love them or you hate them.
Right.
And I think that's where we were. We were AFC guys, so you hated the Cowboys. You just didn't like it. You didn't like the fact that they were done. And the NFC dominated for a while anyway, so that didn't help either.
Yeah.
But you see it so much with the dynasties. And as we continue to do these episodes, we'll probably have the same thing. You loved them or you hated them.
Yeah.
And this has
been
really...
hate doing a few of these.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't wait to do the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah. Which dynasty?
I can't wait. We're going to have to do 2 separate episodes for the Canadiens. You're going to have to do it twice.
Twice? Don't they have like 3 of them?
Well, maybe. So I can't wait for that. But
Yeah,
it's
I
funny.
can.
These are gonna be so much fun. If you enjoy them, check us out. Email us ribroadcasting.media@gmail.com. If you do that, let us know what teams you may want us to cover as a dynasty. So we'll cover any team that you can think of. Let us know. Be very excited to do any teams. We've got some teams in mind, but that's the email right there. Email us. Let us know what dynasties would
Or
you like us
post it
to
in the
cover.
comments.
Right? Post it in the comments. We're excited to continue to do these. This is our first episode. I was excited to do the Cowboys. I'm an NFL guy. I know I can't wait for the hockey. I know Ron's going to be big into the hockey. But we're definitely going to have some fun with these. We're going to continue to do these as much as possible because there's so many different dynasties. And we're not just talking about pro. If you got college teams out there that you'd like us to discuss, we'll do that as well. But also check us out every Friday night, 6 p.m., Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. We are live. We are fan interactive. Sarah joined us today. Thank you for that, Sarah. So we will definitely make sure you get your comments in there. Follow us on all our social medias at Sports Unfolded on Facebook and Twitter, Sports_Unfolded on Instagram. We're on TikTok, T Smooth or Sports Unfolded. We're on MeWe, Sports Unfolded. We're everywhere. So check us out. Follow our social medias. Follow Rhode Island Broadcasting, Discord as well. Follow the Discord Sports Unfolded as we post all of our shows, all of our rankings. We just released our MLB rankings for this week. Every Tuesday, those come out. And then once the NFL, NBA season, and NHL season come, we'll have rankings for that as well. So everything's right on that ticker. Really excited to continue to do these, Ron. I had a great time with this. This was fun.
Yeah, it was really cool to do this actually. Like I said, you don't know a dynasty until you start looking at the roster, and then you recognize everybody.
Yeah,
and that is what a dynasty does. It makes everybody a household name, and we're going to be talking about teams from every sport, and like when you think about like the Russian hockey team, that's a dynasty. When you go back to the banner years of the Boston Celtics, Bill Russell, and that franchise, like there's so much to talk about. Of course, the Lakers, and there's teams that we're going to be talking about in baseball. There are some great dynasties that have won championships year after year, and that's not easy to do. It's not easy to do.
And the fun part of it as well is looking at the teams that they beat to get there. Because
Right.
then you think about some of those great teams that weren't able to get over the hurdle. And as we kept doing this, like Randall Cunningham, who was such a flashy player, and he couldn't get by the Dallas Cowboys. Brett Favre couldn't get by the Dallas Cowboys. Steve Young only got by him once. It's like all these great players, these great teams, and you go, wow, they really were good.
Yeah, think about all those players that couldn't get a championship because of other teams.
Yeah.
And Ray Bork, like he had to go to Colorado to go get one.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the best defensemen of all time couldn't get one in Boston because of Montreal.
Yeah. And that's what happens. And you sit there, and as you break down those other rosters, you go, wow, they had some really good players as well.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they just couldn't do it. Reggie White, I mean, how long did it take him to get a championship? And he had to go to Green Bay, and it was like you saw him bounce. He couldn't beat the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep.
Couldn't beat the Dallas Cowboys. So really fun. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, of course.
Our fans out there, continue to follow us. Like we said, let us know who you want to hear. What teams? And again, if you want to listen to us, you don't have time to watch. Anchor, Spotify, Google, Amazon, Red Circle, TuneIn, all our podcasts through Rhode Island Broadcasting. We are continuing to grow. We continue to want to provide all these informations. If you'd like to sponsor the show as well, ribroadcasting.media@gmail.com. Same email. Check us out. Let us know. It is so reasonable to get your name advertised on all these platforms, including our websites, including our Facebook and Twitter pages. So again, let's continue to grow together. Ron, I am continue to look forward to Fridays, 6 p.m. We are going to have a blast this week, and I can't wait to see what our next dynasty is.
Yeah,
it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Check us out every Friday night, 6 p.m.
Don't forget, we have the football preview show coming around the corner.
September 5th, I believe, is the date. So
this is crazy.
NFL's coming. We'll have the NBA preview show, NHL preview show, all within the next few months. And we are planning a very big Sports Unfolded Awards show that we will be working on as well. So that'll be coming up. Can't wait for that as well. But Ron, let's just continue to grow, my friend. Let's continue to have some fun. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the dynasty. What a great episode.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Everybody.